Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Waterhouse 5, our regular Sunday roundtable discussion. Today, we have a very interesting panel put together, and we're going to explore some topics. Gonna be troublesome for some, for, but I think the listeners and the viewers will enjoy this. I am Mike Anita, your host. And along with me, we have Brother John Arton, Will Rattigan, Las Crawford, and I'm adding to Mr. Patrick McCarthy, and a special guest, a man from the soil, Brother Man Arville Silveira, a social worker in Kingston, Jamaica. There are two topics we're going to discuss today. One is justice reform, justice system reform in Jamaica. And also, we're going to talk about a manifesto. John Arden call it the Ghetto People Manifesto or the Ghetto Manifesto. So that is the table that we're going to dine on today. Let me start by saying this. There are quite a few things happening in Jamaica with regards to crime and justice. A couple weeks ago, we heard Bobby Montague calling for stiffer and more a penalty for the possession of a firearm in Jamaica. Many of us remember the gun court system, and we remember the reason why Michael Manley moved towards the gun court, setting up the gun court system. I'm not sure if that is what Mr. Montague is talking about when he talks about stiffer sentence for guys with guns and what have you. But at some point, there need to be a national discussion as to what this politician is calling for. I heard the Prime Minister also crying out, say enough is enough. But is it really? Are we at the stage where we say enough is enough? Or should we be thinking about an alternative path to bring justice in Jamaica, improve the justice system, or reform it? Brother Arville,
Yes, sir.
you're involved in this work for quite a while. What can you say about Montague call? Mr. Montague is calling for 50 years sentence, and he's joining that declaration by the Prime Minister. What is your view? Because you're on the ground. What is your view, my brother?
Yes, sir. Good evening and good evening to your viewers. Good evening to the other guests online, Les Crawford, Mr. McCarthy, Will Rajigan, Mr. Hunton. I do believe that the current government, the composition of the current government, they are lost in the area of ideas. When it comes to crime, their big mistake in 2016 was when the Prime Minister politicized crime by making a facetious statement. If you vote for my party, you will be able to sleep with your doors and windows open. Yes? Now, story has unfolded that they started speaking about special zones of operation. Yes? We know that they love to use terms, and we know that they love to come up with other person's concept of crime fighting, but they never ever institute it the way in which they are supposed to have. For instance, Zozo is coming out of the favelas in Brazil. Yes? When the government decided that they're going to clear gangsters out of the ghettos in Brazil. The method they used, they announced to the community months in advance that we are coming into the community to clear the community of violence producers and crime producers. Yes? Their plan was to come in and hold the space. While holding the space, they are establishing citizens. Like, remember we had that thing we used to call home guard? They are establishing a home guard system. They established a home guard system that will hold the space after the government forces actually leave the space. Now, during the time that the holding is taking place, there are social amenities activity that is taking place inside that community. Yes? So by the time they leave it, believe me, those previous gangsters that came out, they have a hard time returning because they have a new power source, which is now the community in the space. Jamaica mocked that up big time, because Jamaica think it's about hard policing. Hard policing is coming with the gun. And this is how Jamaica started out as a police force, the JCF. They started out with hard policing in the 19th century, after the Mark Rebellion. Yes? The call by Montague is a regurgitation in a different word with the indefinite detention. At that time, if you had a toy gun, you could be arrested and given indefinite detention. Indefinite detention puts you at the Governor General's leisure for release. Along with that indefinite detention and a special gun court, we had a crime act called the Suppressions of Crime Act. The training the police got under the Suppressions of the Crime Act was to come and kick your door down, particularly in the corporate area, Kingston and St. Andrew, Spanish Town. With that training went on until when? 1997. We're talking about from 1974 to 1997. The only training the police got was force training. Kick down your door and all of that. The police is still suffering from that training to this day. So the politicians is grabbing all of that. They create the fear in the first instance. When you have a society locked down by fear, and the fear is coming from the way we propagandize through mainstream media and the politicians in government, crime. The JCF, they just look at a community and just name gangs in that community. They just give a group, they give groups of youth, 15, 16, 17, gang names. They call them by a particular name. It started with Macmillan. Macmillan said when he was commissioner that they had identified hundreds of gangs. And the only one they could not infiltrate was one called the East Kingston Gang. According to them, this East Kingston Gang never existed because my name was called in it, this East Kingston Gang. And which my name was called? I was working as an executive assistant for a minister of state. Yes? Now, the reality is this, that they claim that the members of this gang were businessmen, aspiring political activists. This is what they claim. The gang there was no such gang. They just call every name of persons who were not a part of their system as members of gangs. They have created a mentality, such mentality of fear, that they tell about these hundreds of gangs, and every day you hear shooting. And we as a system, as a community, have come to realize that gun shooting, violent crimes are not random. They are not random. Yes? All of these ministers know their constituent. And take, for instance, the Minister of National Security. His constituency, it is full of crime. I'm talking about gun crime. You understand me? And they tell you that they know how much of this. Over the years, they keep telling you they know what is happening. So how the hell you're not locking up the people that you know doing these things? At one stage, they said it's 200 guns coming in at any particular time. So how you know this and you're not getting in these guns? They drive fear in the people. So when they come up with draconian laws, the people will accept it. The people hand up their freedom. Crime fighting don't mean I have to hand up my freedom as an individual. It don't mean that. It means the police must become surgical. The police must work with forensic. The police must get CIs and leave my freedom for me to enjoy it. I'm not involved in your crime, so why should I give up my freedom for your lack of efficiency? So, when you look at the reality, though Michael Manley had established the gun court, he had also, with a minister called Carl Rattray, as Minister of Justice, introduced the word rehabilitation to the Jamaica penal system. Inmates was being encouraged to take responsibility for themselves and their action while in prison. Yes? And out of that came a school program that found young people, 17, 18 years old, who barely could read, in a 2-year span, were doing GC, O-levels, London, and getting distinction in maths, English, commerce, and West Indian history. You get my point? People like Agro Brown did commentary on the type of minds that was inside the Jamaica prison system at the time. And he started asking the question, Jamaica, what are you doing? You are destroying. If you see the minds that you have in prison, you will understand that you are destroying the young. I grew in a space in the 60s that a prime minister said to the police, after coming out of a demonstration in my community that I wasn't involved in farming, I was coming from school the evening. At the time I was attending stats. Coming from school the evening, my transistor radio in the bus, I heard that there's a demonstration, roadblock, against the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Hugh Shearer, coming out of Canada. That night, that Prime Minister said to the Jamaican police, shoot and ask question after. He had just come out of a roadblock in Rockford. So where do you think his mind was when he was telling the police to shoot and ask questions after? His mind was in Rockford, Warwick Hill, Heaven. That's where his mind was. And the police did express, because from 1968, believe my boss, East Kingston underwent a dramatic state of what you call at the time police brutality. We all know in chiropractic treatment that every single major organ in our body is represented in the bottom of our feet. Every single organ. Now, here are 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds being beaten with hammer and nail under their foot bottom by the police at Elliston Road, police in Rockford, Vineyard. Come on. How do you think people, young people, are going to react to such treatment? How? And this is what happens every time that you get draconian in your laws and in treating with young people on the streets, you get a more vicious person, you know, because the actions of the police is anti-justice. And justice has been what this country has been fighting for without even knowing it is justice. They curse themselves. We curse ourselves. So we are the most corrupt. Why? Because we are not seeing justice. That's why Peter Tosh got such a fight from the system. He said, not interested in peace, interested in justice. And the justice is what is lacking. Montague and the Prime Minister, they are not interested in justice. They are coming up with things that only the persons who are bent on destroying black youth in this country would support. And I don't think that the conversation is being looked at. Listen. Every effort at helping young males in Jamaica is put behind, steps behind, helping young females when it's supposed to be locking step with each other. Young boys are not being affirmed. They are not affirmed. The males in Jamaica get the blame without a statistic to back it. And they started in the 70s when the women's lib really took set in Jamaica. And mothers seems to stop teaching their daughters to respect their brothers as they do their fathers. So there's no respect. The respect is gone. We need to move away from draconian behavior to soft conversation and programs that is beyond bureaucracy. Take bureaucracy out of the community. Come in there and listen to the people. The people know what they want in their communities. Allow them. Give them that space to make that type of contribution, and the crime issue, it won't disappear entirely, but it will be manageable. It will be manageable. You can't be pushing down 50-year sentence for a man for a gun. That is madness. What do you think he's gonna do when he have a gun? He's gonna go blazing because he don't want to go do 50 years. And when the guns start to blaze, the bullets go on fire and people going to get shot and murdered. Why? Because Mr. Montague and his prime minister has decided to come up with a law to give people 50 years because they have a gun in them position, an illegal gun in them position. I don't think this is good for Jamaica, and I don't think you all would consider this good for Jamaica. Jamaica have one of the brightest anthropologists in Dr. Herbert Gill. And that man has done programs globally that has helped other countries. And the Jamaican government has never approached him to do programs for Jamaica. And I talk about both political parties.
What's the name of that man you said?
Dr. Herbert Gill. He's at the University of the West Indies.
Herbert Daly?
Yeah.
Daily, Gale.
Yeah.
Herbert Gale?
Internationally renowned behavioral scientist who specialize in studying violence. How violence become that animal that just keep growing and growing and growing if positive action is not put in place to check it.
Let me open up the discussion now. Brother Ratigan, what you have a feedback to what Brother Abel just outlined? Because I know you're very big on the criminal justice system, What's your take? What's your feedback?
Well,
Your reaction?
First of all, let me thank Arville for providing us with that historical and current perspective of the situation in Jamaica. And he said something that kind of piqued my interest. He said that the police system the JCF came out of the Morant Bay Rebellion, and it was designed to be repressive. It didn't take into consideration all the factors that a police department should. It came out of repressing people's struggle for freedom out of the Morant Bay Rebellion, and the purpose of it was just to was not to protect all. It was to protect some against the rest, and the rest meaning people who look like us. So that's one. And I would add to that to say it hasn't changed since then. It's still a reactive force. It was designed to be reactive. It wasn't designed to be proactive, much less predictive. And it continues to this day. So what you'll find is they'll tinker around the edges with the system. So they'll come up with things like a national security plan. They'll come up with stuff like Operation Relentless or Plan Secure Jamaica. And on paper, when I read it, and he also made a point that they copied stuff, but they screw it up. Like they copied the Zozo fundamentals from Brazil, clear, hold, and build, but they screw it up. And he's absolutely correct. And when you look at the plans that they have over the years, you'll see that they're actually copying from other countries. And when you read those plans, I mean, I've read a lot of plans, and I'm telling you, the Jamaican plans, and I say plans because they don't have one. It's like every 2, 3, 4, 5 years they have a new one, but they're reflective of each other. They sound good, they read well, but when you talk about implementation, it's sorely lacking. So then you get to the correctional system, and he was talking about rehabilitation. And I'm hearkening back to my days in John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And I remember that they said that the purpose of putting people in prison, fourfold, retribution, that is like vengeance, deterrence, stop other people from thinking about doing it, Rehabilitation, he mentioned that, which is to prepare people to go rejoin society as functional members, and incapacitation. That's not in the prison system. Those four things, they're not in the prison system. But if you read the documents, they'll tell you that, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And it doesn't happen. So if you look at the crime problem in Jamaica, and then you talk about the social aspect of it as well, how we groom boys, how we groom girls, how they see each other, how we, in fact, in South Africa, they have a concept called Ubuntu, which means I exist because you exist. And so when we see others, we actually see ourselves. And we don't have that in Jamaica. We don't have that. And so from my perspective, we're doomed. I'm telling you, we're doomed. We are doomed. If you look at the statements coming out of the Ministry of National Security, we are doomed. There's no coming back. You have to change. Yeah, first of all, you're gonna have to change your people, the people running the system. You're gonna have to change them. And then you're gonna have to do a complete overhaul of the system. And you have to kind of work on the mindset of the people as well. So it's a project. It's not an initiative. It's not something that you just put on paper and put it and read it to the press and say, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. It's a project, and this project is gonna require all hands on deck. So I agree with everything Orville says, and I mean, when I look at the system, I don't see any hope. I really don't see any hope. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, yeah, he was saying that the police, they're not surgical, and they need to get CIs, confidential informants. And that's what you meant, right, Orville?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And they just don't have it. But here is the worst part about it. They will go and copy from Brazil, Nicaragua, North America, Northern Europe. They'll copy from all over the world. But they will not listen to their own about our problem. They won't. They will not. I'm telling you, because if you remember that FBI, that former FBI lady who I brought on a few weeks ago, Patrick, right? And she used to work with me when I was in charge of the office in Southern Africa. And then when I was in DC, I recruited her to come again and work, right? And guess what? Jamaica wanted to hire her. And she said to them, no, I've got a guy here who I used to work for, Rattigan. And them hear the name, and they're like, oh, oh, not him.
That's Jamaica.
So, yeah, they don't want to hear from us because we have a reservoir in terms of a talent pool in the diaspora, and we have offered self and service to come back to make Jamaica in line with Vision 2030 and beyond. Jamaica is a place to raise a family, to work, to invest, to retire, to die. But them just said, no, we don't want you guys. And they took it a step further. They say you don't have standing to bring lawsuits against any corrupt politicians in Jamaica.
Yeah. Standing is the latest. Backing off. You don't have standing. Who the hell you think you are? You're an ordinary citizen. Standing? You ain't got no standing.
Yeah. And just one last point, Nita. Just on the standing issue. The standing issue, what they've said, the court, they've said, unless you're materially and directly affected by the acts of a politician that you allege to be corrupt, you have no standing to bring that case. So what that means is that if monies were disbursed to fix a road in East Kingston, for example, and there was corruption there, or better yet, let's say the money was disbursed to fix a road in Westmoreland, and you live in St. Thomas, and the money was stolen. They're saying you're not materially affected by what happened in Westmoreland. You live in St. Thomas, so you have no standing to bring a lawsuit against anybody who stole that money. It's nonsense.
But Jamaica is a unitary state, don't it?
Indeed.
None of our parish councils have any autonomy. So wherever I am in Jamaica, I am in Jamaica. I am standing anywhere I am.
Well,
So I just can't understand. I read the ruling, and I couldn't understand it.
neither could I.
still-
Neither.
There's nothing to understand about it. It's not designed for you to understand.
Patrick, you heard Will and Arville.
Yes.
And the question that's going through my mind, while it is true that the politician interfere with the administration of justice in Jamaica, what I get from Arville is the problem of labeling. Man, policemen go in a community and them see a group of youth and them just label them as gangster.
Youngsters, yeah, man.
The question, is it just the police or academia, Jamaica academia should also bear some responsibility? Because since Mark Figaro came up with the whole idea of calling community garrison community, this came from Mark Figaro. It's like every community is called a garrison. Don't you see there's a problem? Am I off somewhere there? About academia having to take some responsibility?
Well, but you're absolutely right, because here's the thing about it. I like the approach that
You're breaking up.
You can hear me?
Here you know. You
I hear you
maybe
now.
because you were away from the mic. Go on again.
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying that I like the approach that Arville took, right? Because Arville took that step by step, right? Just coming up through the period and really saw the thing unfold. And the beauty of it is that people like me and, my young panel and so on, right? For years, we have been with it. So we can follow them step by step and see, yes, really, that's exactly what take place. I remember 1968 like it was yesterday. So, I mean, Arville is spot on. Now, the key point that Arville made is the copycat point. And of course, we'll speak to that as well, right? Because really what we're seeing is, a government that really copy their style from colonialists. Them govern just like the colonialists. That's exactly how the colonialists govern, right? One of the reasons why they treat us so badly, right, is because of resistance, right? If you resist, then they will come at you even harder. That has been the order, the colonialists, and that is precisely what the order still remains today. That's precisely why you, Shira, said, shoot first and ask questions later on. That's why I cringe every time I hear, politicians are referred to as leaders. Politicians not leaders. They can't lead us because they don't operate in our interest, right? You can determine clearly whose interest they operate in terms of, whose constituency are referred to as garrison constituencies. It's not uptown. It's not uptown. It's poor people constituency. That's precisely where it is, right? They have always operated in a way of pitching us against each other, right? And then they capitalize on that because that strengthens their control. That opens up the pathway for them to use repressive measures to control us. That is the way they operate. They have always operated that way. Nothing new. So you're absolutely right, because academia is part of what grew out of that system of colonialism. That's why the educational system is so flawed. It is not one of integrity. It is not one that's meant for people and for citizens. It's really meant to maintain control, to keep a status quo in place. That's the fraud of it.
Last,
Yeah, man.
what is your take? What is your feedback?
First of all, I want to say, for the most part, I agree with Arville. A very good overview of the situation where it comes to justice in Jamaica. One of the things that I notice that is hampering the whole question of justice is the whole question of prejudice and bias in the system, social and racial bias in the system. I say that because, and I will mention aspects of it, where the powers that be, the police, the political representatives, Patrick introduced academia, they, because of their prejudice, there's a lot of stereotyping of people from a certain section of our society, certain communities. It is easy to see 5 and 6 youths gather on a corner, and then you hear that there's a gang with such and such a name existing on a certain street in Greenwich Town, in East Kingston, in Waterhouse, because of the whole prejudice and stereotyping. If 12 dozen youths uptown park them car and meet in a certain parking lot uptown every Friday or every Wednesday, you'll never hear the Minister of National Security or the police commissioner saying that there is a gang existing in Norbrook because a dozen youth meet here and drink and carry on the most rowdy way. You'll never hear, and you have not heard, none of us have heard any of these people telling you about gangs existing in Norbrook. And I'm telling you, right, there are youths in Norbrook and other uptown communities who meet up on the corners, right, park them car and drink and carry on. But it is not viewed in the same way. So stereotyping based on class, stereotyping based on race is a big problem in the whole dispensing of justice and how the police, the politicians, how they view people from the downtown areas, right? And that goes a long way in preventing, right, justice from being dispensed fairly. And it is part of the reason why these people, when they talk about fighting crime and all that stuff, they resort to the long sentences and the draconian measures because of the way they see downtown people and people from the lower classes as against how they see people from the upper classes. The other point I want to make about justice in Jamaica is the over-reliance when it comes to solving issues of crime and all that kind of stuff, is the over-reliance in prison sentencing when it comes to, trying to cope with the whole issue of crime and fighting crime. It seems in the minds of these people, if you lock away people, lock them away for 50 years, lock them away for 30 years, that is going to solve the crime problem. There's no focus on things like restorative justice. there is no focus on things like rehabilitation that Orville raised, right? It seemed to be all focused on, vengeance. Either you shoot them down or you give them some long sentence that will lock them away for X amount of time without the humane kind of treatment. You put them in places where they become more animals, right? And it poses a bigger problem when they are to be released and come back into society. That's my piece for now.
John, before I bring you in, I want to bring Andy into the discussion. Andy, welcome back, my brother. We are talking about justice reform in Jamaica, and brother Arville, who is a community social worker in Jamaica, who's active in this area, and he made some points that Jamaican police, basically the administration, they copy a lot from overseas, but when it comes to the implementation, they are off base. They copy about something they just don't do, and we have a system where a society that is focused on locking away young black youths, destroy them. Can you share with the group the experience in South Africa in terms of criminal justice reform? What's happening now? Can you share your experience in South Africa with us? Because there must be something Jamaica can learn from South Africa. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Mikey, and thanks to all. And good evening from my side. It's about 10:30 p.m. on my side. If not 10:40, because I realize that we have spent some 40 minutes of discussions. Let's take it from back to front. Before 1994, before the War of Freedom yielded results in 1994, the criminal justice system was informed by the police brutalizing the community. Most victims were Africans. Even though there were some white people who were feeling the brunt for standing with us on the side of justice against an injustice. And we have seen, amongst others, the sentencing of Solomon Kalushi Mashangu. You should know him. In 1977, he was hanged by the apartheid government. He was a 23-year-old soldier of Umkhonto Wesizwe, where some of us come from. And you remember Solomon Masango for the quote, let my blood nourish the tree of freedom. That era was informed by the whites only government, propped by the criminal justice cluster. I am specifically and intentionally singling out the policing in that era. Let me take you a few years back, just when I was born. In 1973, 1974, I saw my father being chased by white policemen. And one of the reasons was my father was unemployed, and you would be arrested for being unemployed. And a few years back, before I was born, this is 1948, my grandfather, who is my dad's father, was from work. He was in the security industry, was from work on the other part of the world, going through a town called Ranfontein. He was beaten to pulp by white police officers for being a black man going through a white town at about 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Remember, there were no taxis, there were no Ubers by then. And my grandfather had to cycle cycle his way through a town, and he was stopped and he was beaten to pulp in 1948. He was paralyzed as a result of that attack or that assault. And in 1952, he passed on from the injuries. And in 1959, my grandmother, who was living in the apartheid dished little four-roomed houses, was asked to leave that house number 214 in Beckersdale. And the reason for her to leave that house was the fact that she didn't have a husband and could not own a home or a house. My dad was by then um, eking out a living working in the mines, and they were not allowed to buy houses. They couldn't go to the bank to buy houses. In fast forward, in 1984, I was arrested for promoting the aims and objectives of a banned organization, being the African National Congress. We were not arrested for participating in the war of liberation and freedom. They had to find a way to bedevil us as part and parcel of belonging to a bad organization. So these experiences that I shared with you personally led to a situation whereby when 1994 dawned, Mandela got out of prison in 1992, and in 1994 we voted and we took over government. Those who were leading the negotiations and the movement by then learned from other parts of the world that the community and the police must come together into what you call a community police forum, whose sole responsibility was to do civilian oversight on the police, including the justice cluster. Now, the criminal and the justice cluster and the justice cluster or law enforcement and the justice cluster had to come together and formulate a single criminal justice cluster, a single criminal justice system that had the participation of ordinary people like myself in law enforcement and in ensuring that there is a fair and just sentencing of the people. Remember, some of our people were sentenced unfairly and were hanged. I used one example of Solomon Mahlangu, who was hanged, the 23-year-old soldier, who was hanged in 1977. So are many people who were sent to the gallows in Pretoria. Wilfred Rettigan knows exactly where Khosi Mampuru is, the gallows where they were. I was there a few days ago to give a talk at Khosi Mampuru prison on the farewell function of one woman that I work with, a brigadier. So, long story short, the lessons that you have got to pick up from this personal story. I wish Mukhumutu was here to share with you his own sense of justice in Soweto. I was about 15 minutes away from Soweto. I grew 15 minutes away from Soweto. The community decided through our government to join forces as penned and prescribed in the Constitution, to join forces with law enforcement and with the Department of Justice in ensuring that there is participation when you do your parole. Your parole boards comprise of ordinary people, victims, and law enforcement agencies and officials of the Department of Justice. So the lessons to learn would be: one, the community and the police need to come together into what you and I would call the Community Police Forum. The Community Police Forum must find residents in the constitution of the country. The Community Police Forum in South Africa find residents in SAPS 68 of 1995, which is the baby of the Constitution. Acts are babies of the Constitution. So the community by law has the right to participate in these fora that I spoke to you about. In South Africa, in Gauteng, the province where I am, you have 142 policing precincts. The new ones, I just learned of a new police station, assuming that would be between 142, 143, 145. Those policing precincts must choose good men and women like yourselves who has a good standing or who have a good standing in the community to come into a partnership with the police, set up a working committee that would by law constitute your local community policing forum coming from the 4 sectors or the many blocks in the community in Kingston, in Beckersdale, in Soweto, in Vaal, in Tshwane, Pretoria. When that is set up, in the event of someone being incarcerated unfairly so, those civilian oversight bodies that also have representation in parliament in the form of portfolio committees would then be able to derive a sense of fair justice and real justice by the civilians sitting in parliament in the portfolio committees and at grassroots by civilian oversight organizations like the Community Policing Forum. I ended up being the chairman or the chairperson, as is in South Africa, the chairperson of the provincial board in Gauteng. Gauteng, a province, would be what you refer to as state in America. So I ended up being the state community board chairperson, and I went on to become the national spokesperson for your community policing fora in South Africa, comprising of 9 provinces or 9 states. For want of a simpler example for you to understand. Thank you.
Let me ask
Gentlemen,
you a question.
hold just a minute. Gentlemen, we're joined by Sister Maxine and Brother Herb, 2 of our regular panelists. Welcome, both of
Apologize
you.
for running late, folks, but great to see you here, director of all of South Africa's Interpol forces, and quite a leader, an example of what we need in Jamaica right now to fight crime. Somebody just asked me that question a while ago coming on here, and the leadership is where we probably need to enhance that. Of course, we wouldn't mind Mr. Rattigan being in place, but I don't know if a 4th time would be a charm.
All right, we're going to get back to that.
Let me
John,
ask.
you have heard Andy.
All right.
You have heard Andy. Well, can you fix your camera, John, so we can see your face?
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
b-
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Rattigan,
I wanted to
go
ask
ahead.
Andy a question. Now, in full disclosure, I know Andy very, very well. And Andy, as he said, he was on the civilian oversight board. What it wasn't a complete success in my estimation across the country, but where Andy was in Gauteng, and I lived in Gauteng, it worked. But it worked not because of just the plan. It worked because of leadership. And so I would like Andy to explain just about Gauteng, about the cash in transit heists, the ATM bombings, the commercial robberies, all of those things, how they were able to bring it down with him as part of that community relations board, oversight board.
From 2010 to 2013, um, and myself and General Petros, who was the provincial commissioner, took the reins. And Gauteng was number 9 out of all the provinces. And when you are number 9 out of the 9 provinces from a crime scenario point of view, or in the crime land, it means you are the capital city of crime. So Gauteng was the province, if I were to make an analogy, on a loaf of bread, Gauteng alone was taking half a loaf of bread, and all the other 8 provinces were fighting for the remaining half a loaf of bread. And when we came in with General Petros, General Petros, by the way, comes from the organization that I come from, Umkhonto Wesizwe. He was a ranking member there. He was a major in the Umkhonto Wesizwe, while some of us were what you would refer to as riflemen and that kind of stuff. When we came through to taking control of Gauteng, you remember it was the era of the World Cup. What we did, myself and General Petros, decided to invite the community to write a policing strategy. And we refer to that policing strategy as GCOPS, Gauteng Co-Created Policing Strategy. Gauteng Co-Created Policing Strategy. We got clergy, we got the people who work in the back rooms, we got street sweepers, we got counselors, we got women who belong to burial societies, we got gentlemen who were playing players of football. We got to consult with them. And after that consultation process, we're able to fashion a very successful strategy that led to the stopping of all ATM bombings, all cash in transit robberies, all the hijackings. We reduced them from 100% to about 3% on all the national freeways and byways, what you would call your Route 66s of the world, or your freeways over there. I forgot what you call them. Interstate. What we did, we were intelligence driven, and we made it a showcase that all the police officers on tour or on duty with myself and General Petros. General Petros, from a service delivery point of view, accounted to me. Operationally, he reported to the Minister of the National Commissioner, who reported to the Minister of Police. So he was an ex-officio member of my board, and I will chair the board every month. I would be looking at the performance of all the police stations, and I would visit all the police stations every Monday to sit down for what you call Station Crime Combating Forum, the SCCF. I would sit with the communities there who formulate the local branch of the Community Police Forum. And when I am there, it would be like the whole state is there, the province is there, because I was the chairperson of the provincial board. I would query the station commanders. I would look at the efficiency index. I would look at the crimes dependent on police. I would look at your general crimes. I would look at your assaults. I would look at your hijackings. I would look at your trio crimes. Your trio crimes would be truck hijackings, car hijackings, and business robberies. So from that experience, will tell you, I have spent sleepless nights, almost 12 months, not taking a good amount of sleep, but getting to understand the dynamics in all of the 142 policing precincts. And even today, I can tell you where the hotspots are, and what is informing those hotspots. So we took it a step or two further, and did intelligence analysis and shared that amongst ourselves, as the community policing board of the province, representing the regions, representing the local area. And my advice to yourselves as Jamaicans when it comes to your ATM bombings, you need to have your community intelligence operatives. Your community intelligence operatives are those members of the burial societies, football clubs, who get to hear and who get to see and who get to know who's involved in crime. They would give you information, and they would give me information because of the loyalty and the trust that I cultivated with various communities. And we would take that information and share it with your station commanders, who would sit with their intelligence officers to take that information and turn it into intelligence, turn it into intelligence products that must yield results. In my province, I would not be happy if you brought me a stolen car or a hijacked car. I want a hijacked car, I want a hijacker, and I want the firearm that was used for the hijacking, or I want the knife that was used for the hijacking. So you would find flying squad, your rapid response vehicles or officers on the freeways and byways. You would find them doing a stop and search in the middle of the street, anywhere, to look for knives. And the deaths and the GBH assault GBH went down because when you stop them and you took those knives from them, you ensure that people were not stabbed with those knives, and people were not hijacked with those knives, and business robberies were not committed through the use of those knives.
John, I want to pull you.
Yeah,
You have heard it.
yeah. I just well, touching first upon the comments that Orville made, um, which goes back to the slogan that there can be no peace without justice. It's so ironic that the solutions that are being used in South Africa that have brought great results are to turn society upside down, where the ordinary people have power over the police. That's what Andy is describing, is that the ordinary people have power over the police to design strategies,
Yes.
to determine operations that the police must report to the ordinary people through the forum, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
This is the opposite of what we enjoy in Jamaica. There's no such system. And we are using the same system that is being used by the Israelis in Palestine, in Gaza, which is what they're trained to do in the United States, in England, which is a system, a draconian system. The way we punish criminal is by revenge. 50 years? I mean, that's crazy. We're looking at youths who are in their 20s. When you put them in prison for 50 years, basically you put them to die. And that has been the history of our policing. There might be moments, times when we try to develop a more just system. And it only bring me back to the idea of, it's not the name of it, Mr. Nito, is not the Ghetto Manifesto. I would prefer to refer to it as the Grassroots Manifesto, because it goes beyond the ghetto. It unites more people than those only in the ghetto to try to identify. And the kernel I get from Orville, in what Orville said, is a just system. How can a criminal system be just if it relies exclusively on the draconian measures of the police? So that's what I walk away from this conversation with. And using the example of Andy's experience, I'm not getting into details. What I see is a big picture where the people, the communities themselves, leaders from the communities and the communities themselves have authority, power, control over what the police do and the tasks they are set, the operations they have to report back on what is working. If they have good results, obviously you take what is positive and you apply it to other communities. This is not how we work in Jamaica. It's like the old time way my father used to beat me. Any crime I do in the house, we resort to the old time method of beating. You draw the strap and you put some lick on the youth.
Getting a feedback from
That's
you,
my
Mike.
feedback there.
Yeah.
I don't know why it shouldn't have feedback. Maybe somebody had on their mic or something. Anyhow, the principle is those methods are proving themselves to be ultimate in the long term. They may work for a short time. What we want as a group is to identify solutions that are long term, that are beneficial to the community over a long term. So that's my pound of flesh in this conversation.
Somebody has a mic on. Can you mute your mic? Arville, before I come to you, I want to bring Maxine into the conversation. Maxine, you have heard the reasoning so far. What is your take, input?
Well, I'm analyzing in my mind the scenario that would have given South Africa the opportunity to create the type of policing strategy. I was thinking back to, we're coming out of an apartheid, era. Comparing it to Jamaica.
Your mic is up. Yeah, you need to get closer to your mic, Maxine.
Are you hearing me better now?
No, can't hear you. All right, while you get that together, let me bring in Herb. Herb, you heard the discussion so far. What's your take?
Yeah. I have always admired the South African system and alternately the Rwandan system, because they both have gone to a full commitment to community policing. The community policing, and you have different levels, I guess, provincial as well as local police services, um, really binds together well with the community and allow the community and the police to be in tandem in a partnership, and that the fact that they have to talk to each other most of the time means that you don't have to worry about building confidential informants or paying out a bunch of money for confidential informants, or even uh, reward money for that point. But the bottom line is, we see both in South Africa and even Rwanda, where there was a state of war before. Apartheid was a state of war. And then the more latter years, the Rwanda with the Houthis and Tutsis, the killing of over 800,000 Tutsis in Rwanda. They had to go to a community policing and a community justice system where justice was being handed out in the communities. I see Jamaica has attempted to do that with the JPs being trained to hear cases. But these are minor cases, nevertheless, that impact the community, like the stealing of goats and cows and from Farmer John and Farmer Jane and stuff. But this is the kind of stuff that will work in Jamaica if there's a full commitment to it. We have not seen that full commitment. We see the police still depending on having enough cars or having enough motorcycles when they have a bunch of them seized and sitting in the backyard of police stations. These are the things that they have to concentrate. If you're going to let a young officer who's recruited and he lives in an underserved community, a community where he himself dare not try to impose his presence as the law. If you're going to do that, then you need a full commitment to that officer by having a full community policing program within those communities. That means the police are walking the beat. They're seen every day. They're saying hi, hello to the different merchants. They're asking the merchants if they're having any issues. And of course, they're talking to people on the street, and they get involved with the local youth programs through sports and other mentoring, uh, train the trainer type programs, and even the police academy, citizen academies that we see being tried in some states here in the U.S. There's a lot of ways to implement community policing, and one of the best ways I can think of is the police getting citizens to understand the law. A lot of times there's a misunderstanding of the law. So when it's applied, citizens feel like they're being singled out or being picked on. But when you know the law, you just don't go around breaking it inadvertently or otherwise. So that's my take on the effectiveness of community policing when it's practiced in the way South Africa and Rwanda is applying it. I should add, with Rwanda, you have like 74,000 members of their community policing committees, and over 500,000 members of the Rwanda youth volunteers in community policing, and over 2,500 anti-crime clubs trained periodically and backed by continuous awareness campaigns in communities. That means in school, and effective community policing activities have presented a positive impact in the communities. So you got to flood the zone, so to speak. And when you flood the zone, and you apply things evenly and you get acquainted with your community, I think things will begin to change in high crime areas. Thanks.
Maxine, you didn't finish your thought. Maxine,
Hearing me better?
you didn't finish.
I'm saying, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. No, what I was saying was that I'm struck by the interest of the communities in South Africa to participate, jointly in with the police or with the power structure to create these strategies. So I was thinking back towards, as I was mentioning, the apartheid regime ending and black empowerment, black, enterprise, like a mindset being missing comparatively in the Jamaica situation, where the police are more to protect the business class. They have a
Maxine, you're cutting
different.
in and out.
I don't know what's making.
You using an external microphone or?
Yes, I just. Are you hearing me better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was looking at the mindset of the two nations, Jamaica and South Africa. If because South Africa has a a platform for black empowerment, coming from that part.
Something,
In the Jamaica
Max,
where
I'm not sure if we are hearing you
uh,
clearly.
I don't
You
know.
just lost a while ago. We just lost your couple words. You want to repeat that point?
I was just comparative setting government and in terms of how the police react to the population in versus Jamaica historically.
You may want to reload your page, Maxine. See if that will help improve your communication, because you're coming in choppy, very
Oh,
broken.
I'll leave and come back. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we have heard a number of suggestions from community policing to citizen forum. Will this work in Jamaica? Somebody listening to this program and all the suggestion and the idea. Will it work in Jamaica? Honestly, given this condition in which we operate in Jamaica, because anything you start in Jamaica, it become political. The ANC is able to do certain things because they, in a certain respect, they were victorious. There was a mass movement and all of that. A foundation, people recognize, and a sharp division between the races and the classes in South Africa. In Jamaica, it's like it's very difficult to get things going, and it's years now
I think,
we've been talking about community policing.
Mikey, I respond to that. As you said, it's years we've been talking about a lot of things when it comes to justice. For many years, I remember from way back in the early 80s, there have been justice reform, criminal justice reform programs, and criminal justice reform committees for a long time. But I think where the problem is on leadership. because we have recommendations coming from these committees from way back when. You have programs, as Will talked about. Over the years, you have a lot of policies being developed. But in terms of leadership to implement these programs and recommendations, I don't think there has been the will. For example, in the there's Woli Patak in there has been Woli Patak in the JCF, the Jamaica Constabulary, about community policing. But until now, they have just been skirting around the whole issues. I think the mindset over the years in the JCF have been so set on imprisonment, on shooting down people, on criminalizing people in certain areas, that I don't think that the leadership in the police force and in the government is as yet ready to make that shift to a different kind of policing. Because if they were, I mean, there's great opportunity to shift to make community in the Zoso areas especially, right? They could have made that shift to community policing when they clear those areas and are holding those areas. But we have not seen that kind of development in those areas. I think it is about mindset and leadership where we have not seen concrete actions in a lot of improvement.
Ratigan.
I don't I don't think I can add much more than what I've said already. In terms of
No hope. No hope for change.
you have to start with the leadership. You have to start with leadership because I've looked at several crime plans, and I've looked at the one that they have now, the Plan Secure Jamaica, which is like a cascade from the national security plan, and it's so we don't need another plan. The plans are there, right? We don't need another assessment because you keep hearing, oh, we need to do another. No, just go back to what you have and change your leadership. Get people who are dynamic, people who have a vision, people who are respected, people with experience. And believe it or not, they have those people within the ranks. They have those people in the JCF. I'm not telling them, go and get somebody from overseas or whatever. No, they have those people there. I know them. In fact, there's one gentleman there by the name of Rowan James, who's the chairman of the Police Federation, who just got his job back this past Friday by a court order. That man is eminently qualified to lead the JCF. Eminently qualified. The man is a visionary. He's just brilliant. But, again, there is corruption at the head of the stream. And as a result of that, his attempts to make the JCF a force for good, and that's one of their mantras, by the way, a force for good. His attempts have been stymied because he's not playing by the good old boys rule. He's concerned primarily, solely, totally about the citizens of Jamaica. So change the leadership. The plans are there. Change the leadership.
Another thing that.
Sorry.
Go on, John. Go on.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we look at any area of Jamaica's development, we will see a common thread, and that is change can't come from one place without a solution that is national. It brings it back to the point I've been harping on. It's like saying, okay, you're going get your car for drive 120 miles an hour, but you don't drive a Maserati, you drive a minivan. You drive a minivan, you can't get it to run like that unless you change the whole. You put in a different engine, you have a different horsepower. Unfortunately, in Jamaica, in any country, a solution to an individual problem, which does not take account of shifting the people's position in the society, cannot lead to a certain result. So a community policing approach cannot occur without the active involvement of the community. But community involvement assumes a certain level of activity on the part of the people in that community and in the country. It can happen in West Kingston without the whole something that is evolving or transforming in the country as a whole. This is not about which party is in power. It's more about the level of community, quote unquote, people's involvement. And that's my basic, where have we not seen this? It's just not going to happen. So I'm not pessimistic. I'm very optimistic because the youths can't continue to live with this kind of policing. The communities can't continue to live forever with this kind of policing. There must be. Our role is not to determine when, but to give guidance, to give information, to help people understand there is a certain road. Just like in South Africa, they could not impose that level of community involvement, of community policing, without a transformation in the country. And some of it is at risk, for the truth, because the less the community get involved is the more the process becomes a risk, meaning the possibility of it being overturned is always a real possibility. But that's my position. My position is basically you can't call on for certain type of change unless that change involves a movement that is prepared to put an end to 20-year draconian measures, 50-year draconian measures.
Do you think the manifesto will help in this regard?
Well, what is the purpose of the manifesto? Yes, the short answer is yes, because it's a step. It's not in itself the solution. It's a step. The purpose of that step is to identify, with the involvement of the community, of the people, a set of demands, a set of, you carry me over into a different conversation, but the answer is yes, that where we are now as a country, we are able to identify all the problems. What's more hard, what's more difficult is the solution to these problems.
On that note, I want to hold on that note. So we'll bring back Arville into the conversation. Arville, before you left, you wanted to say something. Reaction to what you heard so far. Arville?
He's frozen.
Yeah, I see. He's moving. Seeing that like he's on a wireless. Brother Arville? Patrick, you want to chime in?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, actually.
I'm just reflecting on what John just said, all right? Because of course, I've been following the conversation, even though I've been having all kinds of technical difficulties here, all right, which is another matter. But basically, one of the things that comes out clearly from the discussion is that you cannot move forward if you have various areas moving in different directions, right? For starters, the administration, which is the government of the country right now, is not one that is acting out of integrity. And that posed the biggest problem. That posed the biggest problem, because here you're talking about a problem of administration because they're not moving in the direction that they ought to be moving in. Right? So clearly, again, it begs, the point that was raised, right? For starters, we cannot look at going forward with the present administration, right? There has to be a change in administration. That's the first thing, right? The same thing applies when it comes to the security force, right? The leadership of the security force is moving in tandem with the government, and clearly is not dealing with the real good result to be expected, right, coming from this, right? So that's where it all has to begin, right? Now, to John's point, right, and John raising the manifesto, my takeaway from what John is saying is you need something to really galvanize everybody, right? Because in going forward, it's gonna mean that we require everybody being on board, right, for move forward. We're moving forward on one accord, right? So there's a clear direction in where we're going, right? There's a clear understanding as to what we're talking about when we're talking about national security, right? And it speaks to all the other sub points that are made, like such as community policing and so on and so on. What will those programs look like and all of that? Because when you have a government who is resisting, right, anything, they're not listening to anybody, right? They're moving completely on their own accord, right? And at the same time, whatever it is they're doing clearly is not reflecting anything about what we desire as a country, as people, right? In fact, it goes against all those principles, right? So this is really at the heart of the problem. The real heart of the problem is that we need new administration, right? And that's where it has to begin.
Arville, can you hear me? He's frozen again.
Mikey, can I just chime in since Arville is not?
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things I've noticed, is that the whole issue of criminal justice reform has been more than 3 decades going, right? The government.
We have a constitutional reform.
Yeah, I'm saying the government over the years have gotten the government over the years have gotten funding to conduct various studies on whether it's community policing, restorative justice, ordinary policing in the communities, the impact of policing in certain communities. There have been studies, there have been committees, there have been recommendations. But even though we have all of those knowledge and policies, right, that have been put in place, and nothing has been done. So it is a matter of will. What the the government, the police, what they want to do. Because when it comes to community policing, they're not moving in that direction to any substantial degree. When it comes to restorative justice, they're not moving in that direction to any substantive degree. They're just touching these things and telling you that they're doing these things, but they're not doing these things to any substantive degree to create any kind of change. The kind of change that they are recommending all the time is longer prison sentences, right? More draconian police measures inside of the communities, right? They are not looking to those measures that can change the kind of policing methods that they have and bring any substantial results. They are still going back to the old methods when it comes to prison reforms in the prisons, when it comes to rehabilitation. All of these things have been studied, right? Recommendations made, but we're still not seeing the changes. So it is a matter of leadership and a matter of will. I don't think the will is in the police force. I don't think the will is in the government at this time to create those kind of change and make a difference.
Well, on that note, can we shift the discussion then to some practical thing? And the first of which I want to talk about is what John suggests, the manifesto. John, can you take it from your and sort of give us an overview as to your idea, what this manifesto is about, what sort of thing? Because that's the practical step.
Can I come in?
Yes, come in, my brother. Come in.
Mikey, John, can I hijack the time that you were given? And I hope you're not going to lay a charge. I am worried about all of us on the platform. We don't want to take a responsibility. We're pointing fingers left, right, and center. And you're going to say to me, what practical thing can you put before us for a discussion? I don't know how many constables you have in the JCF. I don't know how many of them belong to the rapid response units. I don't know how many of them are detectives, are in the detective services. I don't know how many of your senior officers would be forming the rank of captains, the rank of colonel. I don't know how you structure your colonels, your police ranks. I don't know how many lieutenant colonels do you have, and how many full-time colonels do you have? How many brigadiers do you have? Or whether you call them commissioners, I'm not sure. But what I am sure that we need to be doing here in this discussion would be to ask the station commander, to ask your district commander, to ask your provincial commander who happens to be and the states that you have the formulating Jamaica. We need to be asking them, out of the 10 constables that you have at St. Andrew, I forgot the names of the police stations there, but I will remember them as we go on. How many constables have effected arrest in 30 days? How many detectives have successfully investigated cases, be them murder, be them assault, GBH, be them hijacking, be them home invasion, yeah, and all that stuff? How many detectives in 30 days, in a month, have led to successful convictions? And what would be successful convictions as per the standard of this discussion? How many suspects do we want to see convicted every month? it will lead you and I to say how many arrests have been made in the past week and for what crimes. And when we know those crimes and how many suspects are there, we will then be able to say how many dockets does one investigating officer carry. And then we'll then be able to do a docket analysis, not a docket analysis in terms of the content, but a docket analysis in terms of the quantity that this woman or this man who's an investigating officer has. If he has 100 dockets, it means he possibly might be chasing 100 suspects, and we would need to ask the station commander or the region or the province or the state. We would need to find out how many people has this person with 100 dockets arrested, how many dockets have been closed as undetected, how many dockets have been struck down by the court as nolli prosequi, as ones that cannot be prosecuted, where successful prosecution can happen. When we operate from these bases, we are now holding them to account. We can do it from our homes. We can do it from whence we are seated. When we ask them to provide us with the successes of the crime prevention officers, how many patrols do they have in a certain area, be them St. Andrew or Kingston or any of those blocks where the police station operates. We would know how many vehicles do they have. We will know how many vehicles are not functional, are defective, and we will know how many of those vehicles have been repaired and within what space of time those defective vehicles that are lying dormant at the police garages that you would send your cars normally for fixing. When we analyze the value chain, we will then be able to get to the point that we want to entertain now, to look at the manifesto, to look at the effectiveness of the strategy. The effectiveness of the strategy from our side would be auditing the value chain or analyzing the value chain. How many minutes in suburban areas is your response time? When John or Mikey calls out a police station, how many minutes does a van or a vehicle take to get from the policing precinct, the police station, throughout the whole policing precinct until at Mikey's spot? We would then be able to say in rural areas, what is the response time? In my province, when I was the chairman of this police board, response time was 15 minutes. Will you know, the guys who were escorting me, Zulu and Radzilani, they were from Tactical Reaction Team, TRT. They had their full gear with them. You would see them. If it means they would need to take out a stubborn or a bull-headed criminal who's thinking that brandishing an AK-47 was the be-all and end-all to life on that particular day. You know, they would spray that person with a sizable number of bullets until that particular person is either faxed to heaven or emailed to heaven or WhatsApp to heaven or goes to jail. To those criminals who were behaving like Clint Eastwood in the spaghetti movies of Trinity and Bud Spencer, those boys, TRT would deal with them decisively, even today, even though that the unit has been watered down for some reason, for one or a number of reasons, best known to those who remained behind us. And long story short, I am talking to you here as an expert in strategy and security as well as safety, nationally and internationally. I would visit your police stations as seated there and as seated on this platform and ask you these questions. If you are station commanders, I would say every Monday at the Station Crime Combating Forum, tell me what are the hotspots. Tell me the timelines of the hotspots between 8 p.m. and 12 p.m. At 12 midnight on Friday. Tell me on Thursday the crimes. Tell me the crimes on Friday in the time frame. Tell me the times on Sunday of the same time period. I'm now asking you on Monday, your previous week in terms of performance, your crimes, the crimes that could be prevented, the crimes that cannot be prevented, your number of murders, your number of house breakings, your number of petty crimes, snatching of ladies' wallets, snatching of cell phones, running away and selling them to your second-hand shops. And I would also ask you, as the station commander, of the pawn shops that you have in your area, how many have been visited by those police officers responsible for pawn shops and for second-hand goods? There's what you call a second-hand good act in South Africa. If you are found to have purchased a second-hand goods act from a person who did not provide you with the ID, you are as criminal as the criminal who sold you the stuff. These are the questions that I would be asking you. If you are my station commander sitting here now, and I'm the chairman of the board, I will be asking you to give me an account. Your account would then be able to say some of your team members for the whole week, they have not arrested any person, they have not recovered any car, they have not recovered, they have not brought knives in, they have not brought in an illegal firearm. We would set targets for the flying squad guys to bring in 4 firearms per member of the flying squad. You would find those illegal firearms with their serial numbers filed off. These are the questions that I would be asking you if you're my station commanders. And from the level of discussion, it means I was going to open up a DR, a disciplinary register amongst you. I would really punish you in the pocket and make sure that it goes into your record so that your SAP 26 or your JCF 26, your JCF 26 would talk about misconduct and many of those things. So if all of us here, including Maxine, we are my station commanders, tomorrow is Monday, you would be feeling me when you are sitting in the meetings, in your station crime combating forums.
And if I may just quickly respond to what you just said. What you just outlined, therein lies the problem, right? Because there's nobody to give you the real answers to these questions, right? Or nobody willing to do so. And therein lies the problem. There is no accountability.
So who
why are you paying? Why are the taxpayers paying the salary of the station commander or the regional commander and the provincial commander? The taxpayers have a right to say, we want a report of the performance of the police in terms of the crime areas, the hotspot areas. How did you deal with the hotspot? The taxpayers are paying their salaries, and it's the taxpayers who must ask.
And the taxpayers' questions and concerns are being met with silence from the government or absolutely no response.
Who is in Jamaica that
Maxine, your phone, your voice, your mic.
And I just want to say something in response to what you're saying. Our problem in Jamaica is that there are no mechanisms in place to allow the ordinary citizens or citizens groups to confront or to request those kinds of information from either the police department, the police commissioner, or the political leaders of our country. That is a problem that is facing the justice situation in Jamaica. There's no mechanism.
Did I hear you say there are mechanisms in place?
There are none.
No mechanism.
There are none. There are none. Right? No mechanisms in place. And in fact, if an ordinary citizen in Jamaica should walk into a police station and ask a police superintendent or anybody in charge of a police station, you would be, I don't know what they'd probably do to you, or think they'd probably think you're crazy, you know, they feel disrespected, you know, that you as an ordinary citizen walk off the street and ask them any kind of question about their work. That is how the thing is structured.
Yeah, but in Jamaica we have a public defender. Can that person move and get the sort of information that Andy is asking about?
That's exactly what I was. That's exactly.
No.
I'm sorry,
No.
guys.
To the point that last just made.
Let me make this point.
Gentlemen, allow Andy. Go ahead, Andy.
Let me make this point. I was just about to go to the next point. Don't we have a public protector there? Don't we have a public defender? Don't we have the courts? Do we have a constitutional court there? Can we go to court and say, I am a particular person X. I'm a taxpayer in good standing, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need these responses. Can the court not help us in that part of the world? Now that I heard that there's a public defender, it becomes the duty of the public defender to ask these questions on our behalf. Thank you.
Not in Jamaica.
I wouldn't agree with that, Patrick. You see, why I wouldn't agree? Because nobody have put them head out like Rattigan. But I think there are certain things in Jamaica. For example, corruption. Corruption is a big problem in Jamaica, but you have civil society groups that have impacted this discussion in a way that it's never seen before.
Such as?
The civil society.
Such as who?
Well, integrity, the integrity thing.
What
integrity action? Integrity action.
They have done things.
What integrity action? What are you talking about? Say specifically what you're talking about.
National Integrity Organization and the civil society. They have done things that force the politicians and government to adjust what they were planning.
When has that happened?
When?
How can we make it happen?
That's a better question, Andy, because it has not been happening. So it is the question is, as you have put it, how can we make it happen? Probably what we need to do is to make these calls to like jump on the Integrity Action Committee and these committees to ask those questions on our behalf. Because as it is right now, the citizens of Jamaica cannot get those kind of answers from the police, right? And the government, right? And will be seen as rude and impertinent to go to the policeman or a police organization and ask them those kind of questions.
Oh, you're
That
putting
is
it
how they would
nicely,
be.
man. You're putting it
And
nicely. You're putting it nicely, right? Because the fact of the matter is, right? You, Michael, you made reference to what? To the actions that Will took, right? And we keep on making the mistake and make it seem as if buying into their argument to make it seem as if it's a personal, right, thing that Will did. Will never did a personal thing. Will was the face of it, but it's not a personal thing. And
and
what
they're
happened?
saying if the thing don't
What have we learned from that?
if it don't affect us personally,
Yeah,
we need to keep our mouth shut.
yeah,
That's a ruling from the court.
right? Which is really just a flawed ruling. It means nothing.
So
Can I
I mean,
interject, gentlemen? Can I say something now?
yeah, man.
Now, according to what Andy was the overview he gave of the operations in South Africa, down to the operation at the station level. What you have in Jamaica, you have 4 portfolios. You have 5 area commanders, all assistant commissioners of police. You have 19 divisional commanders, right? And then you have the ranks, the superintendents, area inspectors that usually run the police stations, sergeants, corporals, and your constables. And you do have detectives assigned to each of the stations. The issue is, how is the reporting done? How is command and control exercised? That's what Andy was addressing. As an analyst, we would analyze each of the stations and come up with station production, station short productivity, station effectiveness, right? This is what Andy was shooting at, right? What are the effectiveness of these various stations? How is command and control exercised within those areas? How are the divisional commanders mobile? Are they mobile enough? Are they getting the maximum mileage out of their charges at station level? Are the people sitting in station? Are they getting up off the behind, moving out, and covering their assigned areas? Okay. So when you have that type of traction, command and control traction, what you're looking for in my on the other side is these community programs where you have the rubber meets the road. And when we talk about what was happening in Rwanda, think about this: 74,000 members of a community policing committees across the place. 500,000 members of a youth volunteer community policing, which we know that's been taught in Jamaica schools. It's been taught by NIA. And 2,500 anti-crime clubs who get training periodically from outside the police force as well as the police themselves. So if you're looking at effectiveness, you have to build a force where we would say to each of the persons within the community, you have to have your own force, civilian assistance from these community policing committees. They must number in the hundreds. You can't have one or two because they can't cover your territory for you. You gotta have them spread out across your territory. Whether it's a popular thing in Jamaica is your CDC. It's the most ineffective organization I know of. But if that brought everybody together, the churches, the businesses, and the other social services organization, when everybody comes together and you get the police command in there, the inspector at the station, or your superintendents, they can be extremely effective.
Yeah,
But
that's absolutely accurate, but that's the problem. The problem is that none of that exists.
well,
Just a minute.
when we
Just
went to Jamaica in 2016 as a task force, and we were requested to interface with the police station the same manner Andy's speaking of, the police wouldn't have it.
Right.
Exactly.
They
but just
don't allow outsiders to come in and look at what they're doing. And all,
gentlemen, let's stick up in there now. We have Harville back with us. No, he's off again. I want him to answer the question as to what's happening in Jamaica. But continue, Herb.
yeah, we went through one big hassle trying to get down to police station level. They gave us a briefing, um, unofficial briefing, I would say, at the ministry level, but we could not get down to the police station level. And Dr. Chang has said he doesn't want us down there in the police stations. He doesn't want us talking to the police,
Of
right?
course not.
So you know, I mean, what are they covering? You know,
Yeah.
if
Major.
indeed those people were proactive in the community, then they could tell us how many community policing forums they have each year. They would be boastful about it, and they would be talking to a number of youth in the area as well, youth clubs, police youth clubs, that they could build those police forums there as well. But we're not seeing anything like that happening. We don't hear any feedback. And every time you turn around, there's more shootings in the community, there's more weapons out in the community, and there's no CI effect. As a matter of fact, the only people who seem to be doing well are your Crime Stoppers. They're paying out a bunch of money because people are giving tips like crazy. So it tells me there's a hunger for police interface with the forums.
Oh,
What's it?
gentlemen, we have Arville with us again. Arville? Arville, we're not hearing you too clearly.
I am just about getting the laptop going.
Okay.
I am speaking to you through the phone.
Okay.
So clearly, I'm saying give me about 10 minutes. I get some.
All right.
Nita.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
Good will.
No, you're not hearing me.
We hearing you now.
I was saying that give me about 10.
Yes, man. Go ahead. Go do your stuff, man.
Will.
Yeah. Yeah. I took some notes down and just want to share some ideas because I think we all know what the problem is in the larger society, and that problem is
plug in.
yeah, and the problem is corruption. That's the biggest problem we have. That's you can overlay that on all of the other things.
All right, thanks.
And in Jamaica, we have so many. Jamaica is a small country. I hope people realize that it's a small country, especially when you talk in comparison to a country like South Africa. Jamaica's population is just about 3 million. I think South Africa is about 55 or so million people, right? Oh, 62 now. Oh, they're having children like it's going out of style, man. When I left, it was 54 or something like that, just a few years ago. But anyway, in Jamaica, we have. I'm looking at. I just wrote a list here. You have the police looking at corruption. You have the Integrity Commission. You have the National Integrity Action. I think that's what they're called. Trevor Monroe's outfit. You have JAMP. They look at some things. You have Advocates Network. You have MOCA. You have a ton of agencies for such a small country. That just gives you an idea of how rampant and how deep-seated the problem is, that you don't have one super. They claim that the Integrity Commission is one super agency to look at corruption, but it's not. I submit to you.
Hold on, right again. I think this Arville still not coming through.
Can you mute Arville?
I am not on speaking. I can't hear you.
Your sound is interfering. Your sound is interfering.
Mute his mic for the time being.
Then.
All right, mute yourself. Mute yourself.
For me?
No.
Yeah, but I'm turning down.
Arville, just mute yourself for a minute. Go ahead.
Right. So you have all of these agencies in a small country looking at this huge
I am back
problem.
on the laptop.
All right, just hold it right there for the minute. Go ahead, Will.
All right. So you have all of these agencies looking at this one problem.
Yes, I'm
in
back
a
on
small
the laptop.
country, and they're not doing a good job. They're not, because there's no coordination. One is because they don't trust each other, and you have to have trust. And so they're working in silos because knowledge is power. There's no sharing, and when there's no sharing, you know what happens? Criminals and criminal activities, they increase because they know that you have a dysfunctional law enforcement / community group looking at them. The other thing is, and now I'm talking about the JCF itself and some of these organizations. One of the cardinal sins in the FBI, cardinal sin, is not briefing up. Far too often I talk to policemen who have information and their superiors don't even know about it. They know, and so the briefing is lateral, it's not vertical. They don't go up. For whatever reason, again, it's a matter of trust. It's also a matter of corruption. In the FBI, that's a no-no. That's the kiss of death. If your supervisor ever found out that you knew something and you didn't brief him, because everybody's briefing up, so he has to go to meetings. And if he shows up in a meeting and somebody there is telling him about something that's happening in his unit, huge problem. Accountability. And Andy spoke at length about this. One of the things that they do in the FBI, they have something called file review. Every 90 days, if you're a street agent, you must, not if you feel like, you must sit with your supervisor. In fact, they have a schedule. You show up for that file review and you show up with all your files. Or as Andy would say, your dockets. You show up with all of them, including dockets for your informants, because you are required to have informants.
Yes.
It's a performance metric. You show up, and I've been the subject of it, and I've subjected people to it. You show up with your files. They're going to go through the files page by page with you. Plus, they've given you written instructions the past 90 days. So now they have a roadmap. So they're going to go through and say, well, wait a minute, I told you to do this 90 days ago. What have you done? They go through every single file with you page by page. Then they get to your informant files. You must have informants, and your informants must be productive. You can't have informants on the books just to say, I'm satisfying the requirement. I have 2, because generally speaking, they want you to have a minimum of 2, right? And the two better talk about a range of things. So they look at the productivity. They look at the number, they look at the productivity. If your sources are not producing, you are instructed to close them and find new sources. That's your job. So you have to go out and beat the bushes to find new sources. There is a unit that their only purpose within the FBI is to develop sources. And so if you're a case agent and you're having a difficulty, and these things happen, and you can't find a source, you go to them and you share your file, your work product with them. And their job is to find a source for you. And they do. Because that's all they do. They walk the streets, they're everywhere. And their job is to find, they have sources. So you come to them, I need a source. Boom, you get a source. So you have your file review. But before even that, you have something called a performance plan. And this is where you're given instructions as to what's expected of you as a policeman. So you know it's not a secret. And at the end of the year, the rating period, you get something called a performance appraisal. And it tells what you've done for that calendar year. So you get a A, B, C, fully successful, marginally successful, failure, whatever it is. But along the way, you are meeting with your supervisor constantly, every 90 days. Every 3 months, you're meeting with your supervisor. So at the end of the period, when you get a bad grade, you can't blame anyone. You can't. That's not happening in the JCF. That is not happening in the JCF. In addition to which, in South Africa, they have a group called Crime Intelligence. I've worked with them. They are, a few years ago, they had some corruption in there, but putting that aside, their job is to ensure that information is received, it's converted into intelligence for the national, for the sake of the country, right? In Jamaica, what do we have? They talk about intelligence, but what they're doing, people, they're conflating intelligence with information. And those are two different things. Two different things. Somebody says, hey, this guy over there is selling drugs. That's information. That's not intelligence. But in Jamaica, they say, oh, it was an intelligence. They don't know anything about the intelligence cycle. You know what? Ask the police commissioner. Ask him. Just ask him. Just say to him, sir, since you're claiming that the JCF has moved to an intelligence-driven organization, then please tell us what's the intelligence cycle. Tell us what it looks like in your world. He won't be able to answer the question. He won't. Because there's a science to it. It's not like you get up one morning and you just say, well, I'm going to go talk to some guy, I'm going to get something. There's a science to it. And that's where Herb fits in perfectly, because you need intelligence analysts. You need a cadre of that. You need what we call an intelligence center or a fusion center in Jamaica. They have semblances of it, but they don't have one that's functional. For example, the tourism industry, they have one called the Tourism Resilience Center. And they take care of things for the CTOC has one, the military has one, MOCA has one, everybody has one, but they're working in silos. And the moment you work in silos, that's not an intelligence center. And the reason why they work in silos, because they don't trust each other.
Will.
Yeah.
Just before you conclude,
Patrick, just a minute, Patrick. We have Orville Silveira here, and I think he's sorted the situation out. Okay, can we bring him into the discussion?
One second, Matt. I just wanted Will to complete what he was saying by answering this piece, right? I wanted you to, before you conclude, just to say all of what you just outlined, right? That being done properly, tell us what that will do to corruption.
That will make a major dent.
Yeah, what I was saying earlier. Yes, what I was saying earlier is that currently on stream, there's a constitutional reform program that is being discussed. Their first order of business, so say the Minister of Legal Affairs,
Oh man. Looping again is I think it Wi-Fi ain't good.
You have somebody in the chat, Yard
Continue,
Tov.
continue with.
Yeah, somebody in the chat that said the FBI is not a good example for any law enforcement system. Their failures
Yeah.
are legendary and their corruption even more damning. My mother used to tell me, ignore ignorance, and I'm going to ignore Yard Tov because you have no idea what you're talking about. And in fact, Mikey, what you need to do is remove idiots like this from the chat
Yeah.
because they just serve to disrupt more than anything else. People are
All
here.
right.
Yeah, just get rid of Yard Tov for me, please, because people are in the chat listening and learning, and then we have idiots like this who come on. Get rid of that person.
yes, I'm having a problem with Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is jumping in and out. But what I want to continue to emphasize is that this program of constitutional reform is an avenue that A, can galvanize the public. B, if government leaders who is involved through the Ministry of Legal Affairs leading this process refuses to accommodate oversight committees, then they'll all be digging their own grave. So this is an avenue through which we can seek to have oversight of the police in addition to oversight of politicians. Yes, because some of the things I've heard Rattigan saying, they will tell you that they do have.
They don't have.
But again, it comes down to, no, they will tell you that they do have informers and they do have, but they always giving you reasons why they are not succeeding. And they blame the public, not themselves. They never blame themselves. They are constantly blaming the public.
That's true.
So it's as if the public, A, actually produces the criminals. The public, B, keep the criminals secure. The public, C, don't give information to the police. So everything is about the negatives of the public. They need to change the narrative. In terms of working, that's why one part of what I said earlier was that let's remove community action from the bureaucracy. Let us take the bureaucracy out. Let us come to the community and let the community make the suggestions that the community believe will help the community, because they are the one living in this space. They know the people in this space. But there is a trust factor. There is a serious trust factor that hinders the public from that type of cooperation, particularly the lower class communities, whose doors used to be kicked off as a matter of course. So that
Aubrey, let me ask you a question.
Aubrey,
let me ask you this question. I was gonna talk about it, but you're eminently qualified.
You're breaking up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're breaking up. Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
You can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, man, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, in 2020, just before the election, there was a community-based organization called the Consensus Monitoring on Crime, and that organization had as participants in there the civil society, government, opposition, who else, church-based organizations, business community, academia, and the whole purpose of that was to present some kind of overview and set time limits in terms of reforming certain structures in Jamaica, law enforcement, judiciary, the prison system. And it has largely, I mean, I know the chairman. He was on my program recently, Lloyd Diston. And I know he'll take issue with him, but they've largely failed. They had timelines that they said we're gonna meet, and this is what we're gonna achieve, and they haven't met them. And one of the reasons the Minister of National Security, who was expected to chair some of these meetings, to show up for these meetings, he did not show up. And his explanation was, well, I thought this was done in preparation for the election, to prevent, violence. But the election's over. So he just didn't show. And Lloyd Distance on my program said that he reached out to him on several occasions to remind him of the importance of his presence at these meetings. And the man not show up. This organization, and you can check it out, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, the Consensus CMOC, it's still active right now, and they're still trying their level best to make sure that these structures are properly resourced and properly focused. But they're failing. So the question, I said all of that to ask you this: if they're failing at this level, and this is at a very high level, where do you see success in terms of community policing? If they can't do it at this level, where you have all the decision makers, where do you see community policing going?
Now, I was looking at not the community policing that is taking place in Jamaica, because what takes place in Jamaica is that there are some police at every given station. There's at least one or two police, usually a policewoman, who actually interfaces with citizens association. And nowadays you can't find much youth club around Jamaica nowadays. So you're looking at a few citizens association that you can interface with. And when you do get a chance to interface with community members, they have to go through the political organization, because politics is more organized in the Jamaican community on the ground than most other NGOs, etc. All right? So they can get audience through that particular area. But the problem with the Jamaica community police, they come in, they speak nicely to community members, but guess what? An hour after they leave, right behind them comes a hard driving, hard policing bunch that will necessarily make a mockery of all the soft-spoken community police had just finished speaking to them about 1 hour before. So there is no relationship between really doing a community policing and policing, generally speaking. That's not evident here at all, all right? So I was looking at the model where you have citizens' oversight of the police, founded in law, particularly constitutional law. That's why I speak to making the approach, and I hope this organization is still operating and is looking at using the constitutional reform process to bring oversight. They will readily give you oversight for the economic, like EPOC and others. They will ready to do that, because the capitalist wants to show that themselves and the government are working in tandem to create A, low inflation, B, productivity, and C, they can enjoy the success together. Because that is what is happening. Yes? Government ministers are being accused of being in politics for their own self-aggrandizement. 6 of them has been named, but no name has been made public. So the speculation is on. But one thing the society seems to be leaning towards is that these 6 persons are not opposition members of parliament. These 6 persons are government members of parliament. What you expect? What does people expect from the ground when the leaders get away with malfeasance? What do they expect? It's like the Gaza issue. The Israeli never expect that one day out of 70 years there would be a reprisal attack on them. So why is it that the people are animals who've been suffering for 70 years when they make a one touch on you? Why they become savages and animals? This is the reality with hard policing and the concept used in Jamaica. I remember the 60s when Brazil had death squad police.
Arville, can you just hold on a minute?
Yeah.
Andy.
Mikey,
Andy, yes.
I request permission to take leave of this meeting. Remember, I moved from one area to the next to have the lights reflecting. There's load shedding where I'm going to, and electricity will only be back at 12 midnight. And I've paid my dues. I realize that we are in a 2.5 hour mark, and I have to drive back to home in the middle of nowhere.
Brother
May I?
Yes,
we're over the time, man.
Yes, brother man, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk. All right.
Thank you, sir.
I have to take my leave
Good
too,
thing,
even though I
Andy.
never drive.
Take care.
Herb, I want to link with you.
Take care, Andy.
No problem.
Thanks.
Chop shop.
All right.
So,
Chop shop.
yeah, Mikey, I have to take my leave too, even though I didn't drive from one community to the next.
All right, I understand that,
we have
John.
a 2 hour. Yeah, I don't think we can discuss the other.
No. Next week.
But it's very much pointing in the direction. I mean, can I leave on one note?
Go ahead.
If you're going to see what's the word I want? Little instances of community policing, the flicker of it in a Jamaica that we are living in now, without realizing how much everything is connected. Why would the politician turn up if there is no accountability, there's no control, there is no way to bring such a politician before the community to remove him if he does not turn up to any meeting? Why would there be any accountability? We don't have any control of that nature. And it go back to all the different areas. It's not a thing. We could stay here and study the tree with a microscope and not see the forest. The forest is the big picture. The tree is community policing without the involvement of the community. It must involve the community if it's to work. It cannot involve the community unless it's a national program to involve the community. So I want to leave on that note, boss man, folks. And whenever we want to discuss the issue of steps in that direction, I'm very much, the more we talk is the more the light shining on my head.
Well said, John. Well said.
Keep
Good
that
note to
light.
leave on. Good note to leave on.
Keep that light shining, John. I will connect with you. Brother Arville.
Yeah, man.
You can continue,
sorry for interrupt you.
No man. Go ahead.
Everything you say, it just dep on target. All right.
Thank you, my brother.
I'm going to take a leave. I see Rattigan start to laugh, you know, when our brethren from South Africa was asking all those questions. I was laughing too, because there's nobody that going to give that policeman you going to go in a police station and ask him how much arrest he make last month.
I would have beat you on your station.
Don't exist.
All right,
Yo,
Arville.
all right.
All right,
Continue.
John.
Yeah, the gist of the point I was making now is that really what we want longevity for any idea for social change that is sustainable. And I do believe that the opportunity exists right now based on this constitutional reform program that is going on. Because I didn't say this, but I was involved in the one in 1977. I was responsible for Kingston. And to tell you the truth, I vexed with the government in 97, 77, yes. I vexed with them in 78 when the global economic crash had taken place and the government started crying for economic crisis. And so they called the constitutional reform program, because that wasn't being productive. That wasn't bringing money into the ministry's hand. It was as such taken out because we had a large task to unite various communities into task forces, provide them with copies of constitution, and have them discuss the Jamaican constitution, the Cuban constitution, and any other constitution we could get our hands on, so that they could familiarize themselves with what a constitution was all about. Yes? That was the only time I said there was an attempt, because this one, there is no attempt to incorporate the people in it. So we need to drive this point home. We need to drive this point home by making the type of suggestions that when mainstream media pick up on these suggestions, then we can galvanize people. And we can utilize social media. I know you guys might be, I don't know about social media, tell you the truth. Me too old for really know about social media, all right? But to what I've been hearing about social media, you have influencers on social media that can carry your conversation with credibility. Yes? So we need to get involved in this constitutional reform program that is taking place, if we want to get oversight of the various government agencies and departments that directly impacts us as citizens in a social way. Because as it stands right now, the people want to find two things: peace in their community based on justice. That's the two things that the people want to find, you know. Because when I know one thing, as a young man, crime was not being driven by poverty. It was not. Because you had more poor people when I was younger than you have now, in terms of population ratio. And you had less crime. So it's not poverty, to my mind, that drives crime, because poverty in itself is a crime based on how capitalist society is structured. These civil societies around the world that speak to human rights, it's a word or a term, human rights. It has no meaning to them. The Rastaman's concept of human right, to me, is more solid and a way of life. You feed the naked, you feed the hungry, you clothe the naked, and you house the unsheltered. That is what governments are supposed to pay attention to. There's a society we live in asks for productivity. Or you going to get productivity out of a hungry belly? Where that productivity going to get the drive and energy from? A hungry belly and low pay. And we live in a society that seems to be proud of themselves to say we are happy. We are a happy-go-lucky people, a happy-go-lucky bunch of poor people who take hardship and laugh, and we laugh at ourselves in our hardship. It's time for the narrative to change. It's time for the narrative to change.
Arville,
Yes, my brother.
Okay. When you take a poor person and you put them into housing, now comes the other. It's harder to maintain than it is to achieve. You believe in that mantra? Because here you go. You put them in a house. Here comes the electric bill. Here comes food. And here comes clothing. All of those means now you're going to have to get a job. You can't get a job at the fast food place because they don't pay enough to maintain that. So you're going to need job training of some kind, right? Something that can either turn you into an entrepreneur or into a top technician, maybe air conditioning repair or installation or something like that, right? Maybe, entrepreneurial items like sales, importing stuff and selling it. But you see, all of those things, when you start crowding out the big man in his haberdasheries and all the other stores and stuff, the Azans and all these other big name people, you're going to run into problems. So the government has to find a long-term solution to meet even demands of the AI decade that's coming in that can replace a lot of the white collar workers that they have. Because machine learning and AI is able to use what you repeatedly do in the tax office, in whatever office you're in, all the white collar stuff. It's gonna take that and it's gonna be able to automate it. And now you're going to have a bigger problem because now the people who used to work in banks, people who used to work in insurance companies, the people who used to work in all those nice buildings throughout New Kingston, a lot of them can be replaced, are going to be replaced if it means that the bottom line is going to get fat. And these fat cats are going to walk off with more money in their pockets, right? So there's a problem now, but there's a bigger problem ahead. And so people have to come to the realization that, yes, crime, if you cut crime, you're going to improve the GDP in the country. But you see, I hear people talk a lot about doing all these fantastic things, but the government can't spend money because IMF has them on the wraps, right? You can't take care of the sick from the bauxite. You can't deal with the people who are out there on the streets. You can't do social programs until the GDP dropped down to must be 60, they were saying, right? It's coming from the 140s, it's down in the 90s. I don't know where it is today. But if you follow these things, the people of Jamaica are doomed to suffer between now and the time they get it to 60. And by the time they get it to 60, it's going back up because a lot of people are going to be out of work. And a lot of companies that move into Jamaica expect that they're going to operate in a certain fashion and that the bottom line, they're going to make money. And they don't have to pay out a whole bunch of social payments for the people that they serve or that the people that work within the organization. So think on those things. And I know we're saying that, yeah, the police need to get closer to the community, need to have that community police interface for things to work. And you need to have a proactive command and control that directs the police in a certain way so that you just don't come and have FaceTime with a female officer in the community and then the roughnecks come in behind her, bust heads, and shoot people. you need to have a program that the community recognizes, and you have interchange with the police, and that you can work with them to quell disturbances in the neighborhood and to take care of people who are poor, who are underserved, and who are in need.
Gentlemen, we have spent close to 3 hours discussing this topic. I don't think we can go any further in this regard. I want to thank Brother Arville. Brother, keep up the good work, my brother. From what I learned from my associates, you're doing some wonderful work. You know, and I hope more people, folks like you, will step forward. You understand me? So we'll stay in touch, brother. We'll stay in touch, and we'll schedule a time to continue this discussion, because the topic is criminal justice reform in Jamaica, but which is a much broader area than just the police. We spend a lot of time talking about the police force, but not about the prison system. We haven't touched on that, and that is a serious issue in Jamaica. The condition of prison and the capacity, prison capacity, and all of that. So we have much more to talk about. So
just before Arville go, I want to say something to him. You know, the matter of criminal justice reform is a matter that is close to me as well, right? And it's something I would really love to really follow up with you about as well, because you know, here in the US is something which I've been part of a group addressing it, right? And we want to really talk to you more about that, right? And in terms of, you know, how we can really garner more support around that and work together more, right? Because I think there are things which I could offer you from this point that might be helpful down there as well, right? And there may be things that you can offer us as well, right? So definitely I'd want you to keep in touch with the group, and you know, I look forward to really having a chance to chat with you as well.
Anyone else?
Thank you, guys.
Anyone else want to make a final remark? Maxine, we haven't heard from you much today.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I fix my laptop.
Okay. Ratigan, some closing remarks.
Maxine, that should be more like Michael should be sending you a brand new laptop so you can be on more often.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I like that idea. Come on, Ratigan. Closing remarks.
Yeah, very brief. Popular refrain is that the stream is dirty at the head. And so with that in mind, people need to take stock of their situation and become informed voters as opposed to legacy voters, and take their destiny in their own hands or fingers. Thank you.
Last.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Arville for coming. I mean, very fruitful contribution. I'm just thinking that, I mean, we need to try and develop more links with people like Arville so that we can explore like more practical stuff that we can do together, you know, collaborate, you know, in terms of getting things done on the ground. So, I mean, we're looking forward to having those kind of discussions.
Arville, you have.
Thank you, guys. I am here. I am happy to tell you the truth. I was a bit reticent when the conversation came with the invitation, but I am happy that I was here today. And some people say I am an ideation person. So let us look at the big picture. And I say big thinkers think big. So let us all be big thinkers here. And I should not say that. Let us continue to be big thinkers here. And I'm open. Maxine, good morning, ma'am.
Good evening.
So
obviously, it is a very small circle. And when we
yes.
talk on the phone, we'll talk somewhere about it. So again, gentlemen, Herb, you have anything you want to say? Closing?
Yeah, one of the head of the security here in Northeast, the Northeast U.S. for the diaspora movement, he sent this to me. He says a lot of groups are talking about crime and human abuse in Jamaica. How effective is it for anyone to be right then talking about something and not doing anything physical to effect changes? He says, let us look at Kingston and St. Andrew. From the Harbor View roundabout going into downtown Kingston, the capital. The place is in a very deplorable condition for many years. Of course, the recent
Boardwalk.
the flooding and whatever else just tore the place up some more, right? And he wants to know that Rockfort area in general, out there in East Kingston. He says people are being told to avoid it, to stay on a certain road and go up South Camp Road. But he says he thinks more people should drive through there and force the government to do something about it. This has been going on for well over a decade. And he wants to know what are the practical things that they need to do to reduce crime in that area and to do an entire refurbishment of the area. I guess that includes whatever up on the hillside and all them other houses up there that's you can look from one side straight through to the next. He wants to know what can be done to help those people. Why is there not a proactive program? And of course, with community policing, it will fail if there's no anti-poverty programs in place and other assistance programs from the government. Anybody want to tackle that?
That's an different program. That's another program.
Yes.
That's going to work more for
That's a program in itself. That's a program in itself.
But you would say it would need to be fully addressed then.
Yep.
Across.
I'm saying,
yeah, man.
No, man, the conversation you brought up with that particular corridor, is one that is needing discussion.
Right.
Because there are things that can be done.
Let me put this out there then. If you're going to do Zoso in the area, or if you're going to do a state of emergency in that area, the clear whole bill, how come they haven't done any of that stuff fully as they had suggested they're about to do?
Well,
the state of emergency that area wants, you see, is a declared state of disaster and a rebuilding process in the community. That community has not had a housing scheme in donkey years. Yes? The last time that main corridor was given a bit of a facelift was just prior to the visit of the Pope in the 90s.
Wow.
And I want to tell you something. It was the Catholic Church who had provided the paints. We provided the groundwork as community. And they provided the paint. There's a lot that can be done along the corridor. Yes? There has been a long time program of regentrification of what is now called ghetto communities by starting with the demolition of zinc and board fence and the erection of concrete walls. That can be done in that corridor. You understand? That can be done along the corridor. It is private people who own the properties behind those Windward Road bordered houses, both south and north.
Is
But
that a PNP area, East Rockford, Paulwell?
it has been that area that voted PNP from 1944. There was a slight pause in 1980, came back 1989, and it still remain a voting area for the People's National Party.
That used to be original Glass Bowl area, right?
He was the first MP, 1944, coming on.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
He was
All
the
right,
first MP.
gentlemen. I think we enjoyed this discussion.
But we
And
need to
gen-
discuss
and
this
sis-
section. We need
and
to do
sister,
it.
Take care of it.
so can we look forward to next week having you back for next Sunday?
Give me a shout.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah, man, just give me a shout.
And remember, we had over 400 listeners, viewers, or device. I'm not sure. It might probably more. If I follow Mr. Ratigan logic.
I'd love to hear their comments.
Yes, and I want to thank them very much.
They were leaving comments.
Yes,
Yeah, man.
current. Yes, there is a lot of comments also. You know, so I want to thank them. They were consistent in staying with us, and I also want to suggest to them that they like, subscribe, and tell a friend about this channel, Waterhouse Vibes. We meet here every Sunday around the round table to discuss issues affecting the working people of Jamaica. So until next Sunday, as they say in Jamaica, walk good, drive safe. All right?
Take care.
Yes, my brother.
Blessings.
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 Yes, brethren.
Blessings.
Love ya. Cool.
Yeah, man.